Welcome to a Tech Moment on Cannabis Tech. I'm your host, Christina Etter. In this podcast, we take just a few minutes to talk about the exciting science and technology that's happening in and around the cannabis and hemp industries. Now, cannabis technologies have been evolving rapidly since the industry really got its first green light. Today, technology helps multiple segments of the cannabis industry to be more efficient, from cultivation to consumer tech. Now, as the industry is evolving, tech-savvy entrepreneurs are finding new ways to introduce technology to enhance their outputs. Finding this partnership between nature and technology was second nature for my guest today. Graham Farrar, President and Chief Cannabis Officer of the Glasshouse Group, one of the most rapidly growing privately held cannabis and hemp facilities in the United States, and the founder of Glasshouse Farms, the largest greenhouse operation in the United States. He was a part of the original team at software.com and one of the first employees at Sonos, where he was involved with product design, development, sales, and customer support. Like a true techie, Graham uses a unique perspective of inputs and outputs to create one of the largest earth-friendly cannabis and hemp businesses in the nation. With cutting-edge water reclamation systems and other industry-leading technologies, his sun-grown and ocean-grown operation is viewed as a model for technology innovation, sustainability, and financial success within the cannabis space. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me. Really happy to be here, Christina.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and going through this podcast with us. I know that you're going to have some fascinating stuff for us to see and to look at. So let's start first with a little bit of perspective, though. So tell me a little bit about your background. We talked a little bit about your start there with software.com, but talk to me about how you feel that your tech background really kind of plays into your role now in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, so I might be a bit unique in that I'm a tech geek by experience and training, but a cannabis lover by nature. And so I started my career in, all the way back to software.com, which was a company that we started in the middle of the tech boom. If you think back to the beginning when people were first getting email addresses and getting on the internet, or at least people outside of universities and government agencies, where we made a product which was the digital post office. So basically it's where your email lived until you dialed up in the old days with your modem and picked it up. It was a really fun company, very kind of cutting edge and new at the time. We took that public in '99, which was a fantastic time to be taking a .com company public, and did a couple years on a sailboat and relaxed after a big grind, and then came back and was lucky enough to be one of the original 6 people at Sonos, which even now, 15 years later, I think is the best product in the category of wireless home audio. So basically it's an iPod for your house. And again, we started that at a time that was very different. It was looking over the horizon. It was not today. There was no Spotify. There was no Apple Music. There was barely even MP3s at the time. Yet we were designing a distributed Wi-Fi mesh home audio receiver, which also turned out very well. And now just, again, another public company, just had a great quarter too. People really, even now, continue to love it. And all through that, I was a big lover of cannabis. I think cannabis makes the world a better place. I think it's good for society. I enjoy it as a consumer. I think it has tremendous medical potential. And I always believed that we would see what's happening now, right? Which is, as Martin Luther King Jr. says, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And the idea that the default state of a plant is that it should be illegal is crazy. And cannabis has only been illegal for 1% of the time that we've been using it as people. And finally, we're putting an end to that. And so, the exciting thing for me and the serendipitous opportunity is the chance to bring my tech background to high-end, large-scale cannabis cultivation, and putting those things together, for me at least, is basically a dream come true.
Right. I have to agree with you completely there. For me, leaving the technology scene and coming to cannabis, I still get to do the things that I loved in technology, and I still get to work with, the different kinds of innovations and things that I was seeing when I worked in the corporate world. But here I actually get a little bit of a warm fuzzy because I feel like the work that we're doing is going towards the betterment of society. It's going towards changing how things have been done in the past, and releasing some of those stigmas and stereotypes about cannabis consumers. And like you said, helping how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people with cannabis therapies and cannabis medications. I think it's just a really nice way for people that have spent a long time in technology, maybe promoting something for a company making money, but now in cannabis we can go promote and actually feel good about the things that we're promoting. So it's really kind of fun, I think, coming from the tech world and coming into cannabis and blending those things together.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity to help build a new industry, right? Certainly we didn't create it. We owe a lot of debt of gratitude to the folks who have kind of blazed the trail for the last, in California, at least 5 years now, I think we would be on medical cannabis. But to expand that industry, let's say, and do it building a business, hiring people, making money, and helping society at the same time, as usually you don't get to put all of those things together. So it is really lucky, and there is so much benefit from cannabis in basically every direction you look, from our environment to our society to ending the war on drugs, which was never really a war on drugs anyway. It was a war on people. And so, bringing that to a close, and then, the healing power of cannabis. I'm really lucky. I sit in a spot where I get to hear a lot of these stories, and it's amazing when you hear about, a kid with epilepsy who uses a CBD tincture to stop or slow down the seizures, or someone with Parkinson's or PTSD, or even just somebody who enjoys a joint on a Friday night instead of a bunch of alcohol and feels better the next day. I mean, it is really an incredible spot to be in. Very lucky to be a part of it.
Most definitely. So now, as we're moving along in this industry and we are combining things like technology and agriculture and recreational use along with medical use, there's another combination that I brought you onto the show for today, and that's the combination of technology and Mother Nature. Now, obviously, we know Mother Nature is perfect in her own right, but she's a little unpredictable. So there has to be some give and take there, and there has to be some ways to supplement Mother Nature when you need to. So do you want to talk about some of the technology solutions that you're using in your facility to kind of help bring out that best of Mother Nature and avoid the worst of her?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think it's maybe worthwhile taking a step back into kind of like some of the philosophical approaches that we use to this. So we see Mother Nature as our partner, and she gives us the foundation. And in this industry, everything comes back to the plant, right? So none of the other stuff happens if it's not for cannabis. Cannabis is amazing. The way that it works with our bodies, we've got an endocannabinoid system. Our bodies make endogenous cannabinoids, some of our favorite, chemicals, serotonins and all those kinds of things. And then cannabis makes phytocannabinoids, which is a plant that makes cannabinoids. And we have a whole bunch of locks in our body, and cannabis possesses a bunch of the keys. We're still figuring out how a lot of those things work and the mechanisms, but we know a bunch of them and how helpful it can be. And so, you got to have respect for Mother Nature, because again, none of this would happen without the plant that comes from her. So as our partner, I'm personally a systems thinker, and this is probably my tech background, right? But I think about how you get the various pieces to fit together to get the result that you want. And at Glasshouse, we kind of operate off the three legs of our stool are quality, consistency, and efficiency, right? So first, you got to do it well. Then you got to do it well all the time. And then you got to figure out how to do it well all the time efficiently. And efficiency doesn't mean not caring. What it really means is it means getting to the ideal result that you want as directly as possible. And why that is awesome for us and our consumers is it means that we can bring a really high quality cannabis at an amazing price and do it on a scale that we can service a market that's the size of a country of California, right? I mean, if you look at California, it is the most discerning, and it's also the largest consumer base for cannabis. It's the fifth largest economy in the world. It's about 25, maybe even more than 25% of the total U.S. cannabis market, and it's got some of the most experienced consumers out there. So they don't have a lot of tolerance for sub quality products. So I think about the systems and how you put those things together. And any business always has one biological system in it, and that's the people. and they are no less important here. But this business happens to be, or any agricultural business happens to have two biological systems. So we have the people and then we have the plants. But if you think about a plant, you can almost think about it as a computer program, right? From the sense that if you know what you want to get out of it, and you can figure out the inputs to give it to get that result, and then you can do that consistently, you can achieve your goal over and over on a reliable basis, right? So you don't get to know what the code of the plant is. You have to deduce it. But once you get to the point of saying, okay, if I give it this climate, this water, this nutrients, this light, it's going to produce this result. And in the genetics, right, every different strain is a slightly different program in there that you're trying to figure out. But once you can figure out what you want out of the plant and what you need to give it to get that, then you try and do that as efficiently as possible. So, for us, an example might be, like irrigation. Let's use that, right? So we have a lot of love for this plant. I've loved the plant for 25 years. In the old days, I would hand water my plants on a schedule and try and remember it and things like that. And we don't want to lose any of that love. We don't want to dilute it. We want to amplify it, right? And so again, thinking back to the old days, I'd water my plants when I could. If I was gone on a trip, that means someone had to do it or it didn't get done. In Glasshouse world, the way that we do that is we get a group of really smart people together. We get some cannabis experts, some greenhouse experts, some agronomists. We figure out a nutrition program that is ideal for each strain at each season and each stage in its life cycle. And then we can program that into the computer. And the computer, again, it doesn't dilute it, it amplifies it. It allows us to do just what we want to do every single time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and produce a better, more consistent result and do it more efficiently. And again, to go on that, there's some really cool things that we can do. For example, with our irrigation system, we have it tied to a light meter. So we figure out what the plant needs. And then if it's a cloudy day, we give it a little less irrigation and nutrients because it's going to photosynthesize less. And if it's a really sunny day, we give it a little bit more because if you feed it, that extra amount, it can put it to work because the light is there. And that's really the goal, right? Which is precision agriculture. If you give it more than it needs, you're wasting something. And if you give it less than it needs, you're losing something. And so our goal is to stay right down the middle of not too much, not leaving anything on the table. And that's that quality, consistency, efficiency model that we work on. So some really fun things that we can do. And we have some amazing tools and really smart people on the team that I think allow us to do it, as good or better than anyone else out there today.
Graham, I absolutely love that description that you use of inputs and outputs and how it kind of relates to technology. And obviously we know that with the right inputs, you're going to have a great cannabis grow. And if you don't have the right inputs, your cannabis grow might not be all that great. And it was really great to hear your perspective on that. And then look at that too, from that partnership that you kind of talked about in Mother Nature and the cannabis grow and blending technology and Mother Nature together to really produce the best crop that you can. Now, one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch base on though is you talked about what the differences were between when you were growing, maybe 6 or 12 plants of your own versus growing a commercial cannabis operation. And a lot of times I think the concept there gets lost in translation, but we know that maintaining a perfect environment for cannabis is critical in the commercial operations. Mm-hmm. And often though, what has to go into cannabis cultivation isn't exactly as environmentally friendly outside of the operation. So what kinds of technology are you looking at or have you employed to help improve your sustainability and use less resources so your cannabis grows a little more environmentally friendly as well?
Yeah, great question. So I think, I believe, and we're certainly striving to have one of the most environmentally friendly agricultural operations, and cannabis is obviously a part of agriculture out there. And I think that cannabis has a lot to learn from general agriculture, and I also think that it has a lot to teach general agriculture. It also is currently in the place which is kind of rare for ag, that it actually has some margins, right? We are focused on being growing more versus growing the same with less sometimes. And I think there's an evolutionary or kind of maturity process that we'll go through, and it will happen to some degree with cannabis too. But right now we're in this world where we're blazing a trail and figuring out how cannabis works and how we can get the most out of the plant, and then do that as efficiently as possible. So things like that we recapture all of our or they call it overdrain. So when you irrigate a cannabis plant, anything the plant doesn't suck up on the water and fertilizer drains out the bottom, basically, called overdrain. Oftentimes in agriculture that just soaks in the ground, the water's wasted, maybe even the fertilizer, the nitrogen has potential to contaminate things. And in our operation, we capture all of that overdrain, and then we recycle it and we sterilize it and we reuse it, such that we're not wasting any water, we're not wasting fertilizer. And I like to think about it as what we call the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line is it's good for the planet, it's good for the business and our employees, and it's good for our consumers. And so something like recycling, capturing, recycling the water, it's good for the planet because we're not wasting water. It's good for the planet because we're not putting fertilizer back into the groundwater tables. It's good for our business because water and fertilizer are valuable commodities and affect the profit margins and the cost that we need to charge. And it's great for the consumer because they know that they're supporting something's good, and also because it's more efficient, it allows us to deliver a better product for a lower price, right? So there's kind of two ways to bring costs down. One is a substandard product. The other is a product that's created more efficiently, right? So if we're not throwing away fertilizer, we can run just as good a business and have just as good a cannabis and sell it for less money than someone who is throwing something away. And so when we can satisfy that triple bottom line, it makes us happy because we know that everybody that we care about in the chain, our business, our employees, our environment, and our consumers are all winning. So, really the entire precision agriculture approach we use is a eco-friendly and sustainable approach. If you do not waste things, if you get as much from the inputs that you give, you almost are by definition creating the most sustainable and eco-friendly result out there. Another example, we're essentially a pesticide free farm. We don't use chemicals. We don't, we use bugs basically. So again, we partner with Mother Nature, and then we kind of tilt the odds in our favor, similar to the greenhouse, where we take the climate in beautiful Santa Barbara, and then we use the greenhouse to polish it just enough to make it really perfect. With integrated pest management, or IPM, we use a spider mite as an example. Spider mites like to eat cannabis plants. It'll kill your plant. Persimmilus or Californicus or Swirsky bugs like to eat spider mites. So rather than using toxic chemicals and nerve agents, which pesticides oftentimes are, and spraying it down, and our employees have to apply it, and the community is experiencing it's going out into the environment, we take a Californicus, which likes to eat spider mites, and we spread those all over the greenhouse. So that way we just take the natural ecosystem that Mother Nature would have, but we tilt it in our favor with really high populations, the good bugs that like to eat the bad bugs. And so we achieve the same result, again, with a triple bottom line of it's better for the environment, it's better for our employees, it's better for our business, it's better for the consumer. It's also helpful too because cannabis regulations are really strict, and the best way to pass those tests is not to use the things they're testing for.
Exactly. And for me, at least as a cannabis consumer, it's refreshing for me to hear that companies are not just looking for the cheapest, fastest way to turn a dollar. You're looking for sustainable, quality ways to continue to bring a quality product to the cannabis market. And for me as a consumer, that's reassuring. It helps me to trust the products that I'm buying and know that the legal market is really helping to improve products and to make things better, and that there's companies out there like yours that are saying, hey, we want quality over quantity, and making that effort to make their operations better, more efficient, easier on the environment. I just think as a consumer that's concerned about climate change and concerned about our environment, I think that most cannabis consumers are going to be looking for companies like yours that are thinking the whole operation through rather than just thinking about their bottom line. So that triple bottom line is a really neat.
I think that's a great perspective. And there's plenty of things with the legal the legalization of cannabis that we still need to improve, over-regulation, over-taxation. But one of the things that is really great is the fact that consumers can know that they have a clean, tested product. And so that health and safety side of things is something we certainly don't want to give up on. And so again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, which is cannabis has a lot to learn from ag, but it can also teach and help ag too, right? So us buying $30,000 a month of bugs makes the guys, the insectarias, they call them, who grow the bugs, able to expand their operations. With expanded scale, the price comes down. And then other agriculture, which might not have otherwise been able to afford an IPM approach, now has a lower cost. And, they're 10 times, 100 times bigger than cannabis. So if we can help enable and get that kind of virtuous cycle rolling, it's a win-win for everybody, right? And I would love, using IPM is not that uncommon in Europe. It's pretty unheard of here. So to be able to help kind of initiate that and bring that to the general ag is something that I think is, we feel proud of and want to keep doing more and more of that.
I can't agree more. I think it's really fun, at least from my perspective. I used to work in agricultural technology too before I came to the cannabis industry. And it's really fun for me, at least, to be able to see the different technologies and things that I was working on a decade ago actually being put into place and used in a commercial cannabis facility and being put to work, So it's really interesting, I think, for me to see that technology perspective. Now, one of the things that I did want to cover with you today, though, is, and this is a question that we kind of hear a lot, and it goes back to my comment that moving from a personal grow to a commercial grow, there's some things there that kind of get lost in translation. But what are the major challenges that you've faced trying to maintain this type of facility, one that's efficient and concerned more about quality than just that bottom profit dollar?
Yeah, so cannabis is, I'm going to say, one of the hardest agricultural crops out there, right? I mean, one of the things that I'm good at, I guess, is that I've got a lot of experience doing things that people don't have any experience doing, and larger scale. When we say large scale, it's kind of funny, right? I mean, cannabis is tiny in the agricultural sense, right? We say large scale cannabis because it happens to be the biggest cannabis that anyone's seen to date, but no other agricultural crop speaks in square foot, right? So when we say we have 500,000 square feet of cannabis greenhouses, normal ag would call that 13 acres, and you wouldn't have much to say about it, right? I mean, big greenhouses are 130 acres or even bigger than that, right? So 13 acres is really not tiny, but for cannabis, it's bigger. It's the biggest that people have done, really. And so, cannabis has all the agricultural challenges and being a farmer is hard, and all of the farmers out there deserve our respect and appreciation because, it's one of the few groups of people who actually makes something new on this planet. If you think about it, almost everybody else is just transforming things that already exist, right? Farming is a unique thing, is that it literally takes energy in the form of photons that come out of outer space from the sun and create something new on our planet, right? And it's a hard thing to do, and it's special because it fuels a lot of other processes that happen, again, in that kind of systems model, right? And so that you have all of that, right? Plants don't care if it's Christmas, they don't care if it's a pandemic, they will die any day of the week on you. So it's a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365 day a year job. And then you throw cannabis on it, right? And that means that there's no necessarily rule book on how to do things. If we were growing corn and we said, hey, we're in a 7-day climate region, we'd like to plant in March, they'd say, well, here's the seed that you use to do that. And everybody knows that. They figure it out. And by the way, we can sell you 1 million seeds, and those 1 million seeds will grow 1 million identical plants. Cannabis no one knows that, right? We don't have seeds. They have called the, homozygous or true breeding seeds. It doesn't even exist yet in cannabis, right? So everything's coming from clones and things like that. So you're trying to figure that out as well. And then you have what is, I'm sure, the most regulated crop on the planet, right? I mean, testing for microbials and mycotoxins and heavy metals and 66 different pesticides down to the parts per billion and licensing fees. And every single plant is tagged and reported to the state, right? So then you have to take all these things, and it's kind of like flying an airplane. Flying an airplane is not that hard. Communicating on the radio is not that hard. Navigating is not that hard. But if you have to fly the airplane, navigate, and communicate on the radio all at the same time, it gets to be a lot. And so cannabis is, you got to be a farmer, you got to figure out a new crop, you got to navigate regulations, and you got to figure out how to run a business at the same time. So putting those things together and not dropping any of those balls is probably the hardest thing about cannabis. Is it's just so much that's so new and so onerous that it's a lot to do at the same time.
Right. There's no doubt the cannabis industry has got to be one of the most complex industries that's out there. Like you said, when you just factor in all of the different variables, different things that you have to work with, the different things that can go wrong with the crop, and then the things that can go wrong with compliance, the things that can go wrong with regulation. There's just a million and one ways that the cannabis, especially commercial cannabis operations, can go wrong. And so it's definitely, it's got to be a challenge. And then to factor in trying to maintain environmentally friendly processes and resource, save on your resources and sign up for, incentives and rebates through your energy and utility companies and all of these things that go along with it. It's just a very, very complex industry. So with it being so incredibly complex and then making it even more complex, using all of these different types of systems to improve your processes, what are the benefits?
Yeah, well, I think cannabis is a benefit. I think the opportunity, or the challenge is also the opportunity, right? If everything I'd said was figured out, this would belong to Cargill or Monsanto or some other large agro kind of company, right? We wouldn't be here, right? If I tried to go into tomatoes, I'm sure I'd get my ass kicked, right? Those guys grow a tomato for $1 and they're happy if they can sell it for $1.05. Like, that's an entirely different set of challenges. And so the fact that no one knows, the fact that we're still ambiguous, let's call it legal in California, but illegal on the federal level, is exactly what creates the opportunity and the upside for us and others like us in this industry to put this together, right? And so I think there's outsized returns if you get it right. There's the ability to, the opportunity to build a new industry and change the course of our society to some degree, the opportunity to build brands, there's opportunity to help people, there's an opportunity to give people alternatives to alcohol. And especially these days with the through the pandemic, right, we saw cannabis was deemed essential by the state of California, right? So from illegal to essential in not a very long time is a pretty awesome spot to make. And the reason it was deemed essential is because people consider it medicine. And if we saw a lot of people who would come in who weren't the fun on a Friday night crowd, they were the tincture on Tuesday crowd, right? They were using cannabis not for a party, but because their kids came home in March for spring break and they haven't left, or they stared at the case count ticker on the news for too long and they couldn't sleep. And cannabis was providing them with healthy relief. And that's like, if you can take the pharma out and put the farm in, even for a portion of what we're doing, I think we're making tremendous progress. And again, to be able to grow a profitable, good business and do that at the same time is amazing. I mean, we hired 60, 70 people through the pandemic. We didn't lay anybody off, right? That's a bright spot against a pretty bleak economic background. We were generating $22 million a year, not personally, but the industry, for Santa Barbara County when they're trying to figure out how to pay the firefighters and keep the libraries open because all of their tourism revenue is gone, right? So there's, our employees are paying their rent and keeping people, apartments from getting foreclosed on and buying groceries and, all this important stuff. And if we didn't have a legal cannabis industry, this wouldn't be here. So I think, the benefits are everywhere you turn, basically, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. I especially think after this pandemic and obviously after the election this year with 5 different states, the voters voting in cannabis legalization on the ballots, I think that's just testament to the fact that people are starting to recognize the benefits of the cannabis industry, not necessarily, just from the legalization standpoint, but post-pandemic, when we're looking for ways to improve the economy or to provide jobs or to do the things that are going to need to be done to rebuild things after the pandemic is over, I think looking at the cannabis industry to me just seems like a no-brainer. There's just so many opportunities, and not even in facilities like yours, operations, where you're actually plant touching, but within the ancillary industries, the equipment industries, all of these different things that are all coming together to help build a new industry that's going to be able to really impact our economy as a nation. And once I think federal legalization goes through, I think it's just going to be really interesting post-pandemic to see what happens from here on out and see where cannabis goes. Because I really believe that we have some big opportunities yet that haven't been recognized through this industry. So definitely going to be interesting. Now, on that same topic or a similar topic, looking into the future, what's in the future for Glasshouse Group? What do you have going on? And do you have any new tech upgrades that you're looking at or you're considering for your operation?
Yeah, so lots in the works for us. I think more expansion. We really are happy with the way that our Glasshouse Farms and Field brands are doing. Some more cultivation, increasing our CPG and brand penetration throughout the state. That means more footprint for cultivation. Also means more productive and more efficient cultivation. So we're expanding both in footprint as well as in output. Currently doing some interesting tests with highly efficient supplemental lighting that would allow us to use what we have, and then particularly in the winter months, since again we partner with Mother Nature, which means we are part of the seasons. We take the view that we are part of nature, not on top of it, and so there are ways that we can add and bring back the summer sun through the winter months and things like that, so that we can again leverage and make our output as efficient and large as possible. I think we're continuing to improve our environmental controls, which is a great win-win, because it's actually oftentimes about using less, not more, to get a better result, which we always love. Bringing in new features like scales on plants, so that we can specifically measure as the plant uses the water that we've given it, so that we never are irrigating a plant that doesn't need to be irrigated. We can do that by weight sometimes, which is cool. Automatic measurement of pH and EC that feeds right back into the computer, so that it can make real-time adjustments, again, to use less, never use more than you need, because that's wasteful on all those categories. It makes the product more expensive, makes our margins worse for the environment. So lots of really cool stuff leveraging technology right now that are being fed into the funnel. And I think over 2021 we're going to see the results of a lot of that. And it's again, I'm confident it's going to be a real boost to that triple bottom line approach that we take.
Very nice. Yeah, no, I think it's great to see all of the innovations that are starting to happen within cannabis. As the veil continues to lift a little more and a little more and a little more, you get other companies that start to become interested in the cannabis industry, and then you start to see more innovations and technology upgrades come along. So it's really reassuring, I think, to kind of see things advancing and moving along so quickly. And you mentioned earlier how nice it is too that now that the cannabis industry is moving forward on a legal level, they're able to kind of provide, like you said, some benefits back to the regular agricultural communities. I mean, how many things are we seeing in terms of vertical grows and indoor grows for food production that are being enhanced because of the technology that's being developed by the cannabis industry. So it's really, really fascinating, I think, to see how this is all going to play out. And we absolutely appreciate grows like yours and people like you coming on the show and talking to us about what the options are out there and what kinds of technologies are being used in these facilities. And so it's always nice to see things working well and to be able to talk to growers like you that are doing things and finding success with the technologies, and of course being able to blend it with Mother Nature and use it appropriately.
It is really exciting to be able to apply. Again, I pinch myself sometimes that I get to take two of the things that I love, cannabis and technology, and build a business in my backyard of Santa Barbara, California, on the beautiful coast in my hometown. It's just it's kind of incredible to be able to put all those things together, and lots of hard work, but feel really lucky to have the opportunity to work on solving the problems in front of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the best part of the cannabis industry is being able to combine those things, those passions that we have. And I'm like you, I had a passion for technology before I became a journalist. And it just so happened that I fell into the cannabis industry and found a way to use that technology and use the experience that I had in a past life and apply them to this career. And now I'm like you, I get to pinch myself every day. Well, Grant, it's been absolutely phenomenal having you here on the show. And we so appreciate having you here and talking about your facility. And maybe we'll get to check back in with you here and, maybe in a few months and see what kinds of new things are going on at the Glasshouse Group.
Yeah, please. And thanks for having us. It was great to be here. I appreciate it. Appreciate your guys' show and love to come back anytime. And if you're ever in California, come by and see it in person. The door's always open.